Hello, everyone.
Hello.
We have Usama El-Binni with us and Hani Dweik with us, and we're talking about Ramadan and the health risks, how to avoid fasting. But I also want to give a big disclaimer before all that. So, do you guys want to hear the disclaimer then?
Go ahead.
Sure.
I just wanted to say something basic, like we can't come up with like a universal ideal that will work with everyone. We have to kind of talk about every individual group separately, but still try to talk about all of them. The most vulnerable group I think we should focus on is the very young teenagers. Teenagers, I guess, because there's more of them that are like, by the time you're an ex-Muslim, you may be already a teenager. So if you're younger than that, it's not as bad. You wouldn't be listening to this anyway. And I guess this group knows very little about nutrition and about biology in general and chemistry and physics. So I think we need to help on that level of things. I don't want them to get fooled by this. This happened to me today. Somebody replied to me in a post about this saying, so what about, what do they call intermittent fasting? Is there anything wrong with that? And I just, and they said they were trying to focus on the Ramadan fasting though, not the intermittent fasting. If intermittent fasting is good, therefore Ramadan fasting is good. And I said, how about the difference of water?
It's different. Exactly.
What's funny was they replied, oh, so that's all? There's only the issue of water? And I replied, well, I mentioned one thing. I didn't mention 1,000 things. I wasn't expecting to write an essay for you.
Yeah, and it's a very, very important. Like they think like, oh, water is something trivial. It's not. It's very, very, very important.
So let's say some basic stuff about this for people, okay? And I was saying this just before Usama got on. We're 75% water, okay?
Yeah.
Everything that happens in our bodies happens inside of water, and only happens because of water. In a sense, like water has to be there. All chemical reactions don't happen in a vacuum; they happen inside of water.
Yeah.
And so when you're dehydrated, all your chemical reactions that would be happening normally are happening less. So that's your entire immune system. That's all your hormones, everything. I'm pretty sure your body's going to do stuff like similarly with food. If your body recognizes that, hey, we don't have enough energy, enough food, it's going to shut things down and go into like a hibernation mode. And I'm pretty sure the same thing happens with water. And while everyone is trying to, live their lives, go to school, and you have to think for 8 hours while you're dehydrated, this is not going to work. So that's the basic thing I want to tell people. And none of us are nutritionists, just to be clear. We're not experts in nutrition.
It's a common sense, you when you listen to your body, like, for example, it's a natural thing. When it is hot, for example, I'm working in a very, very hot context. Immediately my body is asking for something like liquid, cold. So immediately my mind goes to cold water, so I drink a glass or two of
the Chinese water. Drink hot water.
Even though that for me, I always like, I drink room temperature water, but sometimes when it is hot, like here it reaches 42, degrees. So
108 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's make it clear for everyone.
Yes. So it's so you need liquid, you need water, and it's funny, as I was telling you, Rami, and just before going on live, like what is funny is that you see all these nutritionists and doctors all year talking about how important you have to drink 2 liters or 8 glasses of water, like in the morning, in order to hydrate your body and hydrate your system. The same doctors, when it comes Ramadan, all of a sudden they say, oh, it's very, very, very good not to drink water and eat food. And you're like, you just like a month ago, you just said
I've never
that,
heard anyone do that. That's very
Oh,
interesting.
that's because in the US
Yeah.
you don't actually get this kind of messaging that often happens. So on a typical day in Ramadan, you have several types of programmings, including things that are related to recipes for things that you're going to do for iftar. It has some special drama that makes people spend a lot of time in front of the TV instead of thinking about the food. But one of the genres that you would find also are medical people, medical experts, supposedly, that go on TV, like Hani just said. They one month ago they are talking about how important it is to keep your body hydrated, and then
what's going on in their mind?
they are promoting exactly the opposite. And very often you would find a respectable doctor who is well qualified to practice medicine starting to quote hadiths about.
Do they know they're bullshitting?
They don't. I'm
They
sure
don't.
that many of them don't. Many of them think that this is true. I'm sure that some actually realize that this doesn't actually make sense. But for the most part, when these come and start talking about these topics, they are believing that you're actually superseding whatever it is that you typically think about.
So during the month of Ramadan, and your biology works a certain way and it's good. But in the other 11 months, you have different biology and it's good the other way.
Well, and then that ties up to what you were talking about at the beginning with the intermittent fasting. So in 2016, there was a Nobel Prize that was awarded for a Japanese researcher, forgot his name, for autophagy, which is basically how your body recovers during fasting. And since that time, whenever Ramadan comes up, well, look, there is that Japanese Nobel Prize winner who got that because he was actually.
And what's happening there is it just shares a word called the word fast, but none of the policies are the same.
Exactly.
Well, the thing is, and I'm sorry, Usama, but exactly, like, they don't talk about what does this scientist mean by fasting. They take that word and that's it. But that scientist, I am positive, he would never say don't drink water. Like,
not only don't drink water, but the kind of excessive fasting that would happen, especially during summer months, where you're really fasting for most of the day. The more northern you are, the more excessive it's going to be. If you go to a place like Scandinavia during the summer, you're essentially
go ahead and tell them. Not everyone knows. So some places on Earth you could be living where the sun is out for how long?
It might be in some places
months, right?
it doesn't actually
like 20 hours.
It doesn't go down.
Yeah.
No. In some places on Earth it doesn't go down, and in
on
the opposite side of the Earth, it never goes up.
Yeah.
No, so and the thing is,
so then Ramadan would be really easy over there. We should all move over there. Where's that? I think that's over water though. It's Antarctica, right?
Well, it depends on the season. So if Ramadan came in the winter in Scandinavia, essentially you're going to be living in complete darkness the whole time. If the sun comes up, it's going to come up really shyly over the horizon and then go back down a couple of hours afterwards. So,
and that's what it. For example, Ramadan was one of the issues that made me realize how local Islam is, and that it is not a global thing. Because if Muhammad knows, he would have known that people in Sweden, they would have either a 2-hour Ramadan or 3 hours Ramadan in winter, or it will have 20 hours like Stockholm, north of Sweden. Like the sun will be out for 20 hours, and even the 4 or 5 hours night, it's very hazy. It's still, so that's what made Islam is a very, very local to, because for example in Mecca, the difference between winter and summer is only, you're talking about a margin of an hour and a half, maximum 2 hours. So that's why Ramadan is more or less the same kind of hours, you know, it's not that difference.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and you can see more implications of that kind of locality and thinking that's completely devoid of any kind of understanding of what the earth looks like. So for example, when thinking about
flat, I guess.
When thinking about Ramadan, that's one example of how things are going to be changing one season to another. But if you also look at prayer and you're supposed to be praying towards Mecca, it's definitely the case that whoever formulated that original form of worship was thinking of a flat earth. It doesn't work for a globe. Because the direction that's going to connect you directly to Mecca is never going to be a straight line that's going over land. At some places, it's just going to go through the earth. And so they come up with all sorts of ways to deal with this. You were talking about the geodesic over the curved geometry of Earth. That's going to be the shortest distance that's going to connect you to Mecca, and that's how they now come up with those directions. I believe they, before, was it an Indonesian or Malaysian astronaut went to space, they kept debating about the direction of prayers when he's in the space station before he went up.
Down.
I mean,
yeah,
you have to pray down.
the problem is that you're orbiting the Earth several times per day. In which direction are you going to be?
How are you going to pray if you're floating?
Yeah, well, that's,
like you're not even on the floor.
Yeah.
So
you know,
what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And you know, to be fair, like in all religions and in all, you know, ideologies, they do have fasting. You know, like a colleague of mine who's from Ethiopia, their fasting is even brutal because they fast 12 hours like Muslims, no food, no water, nothing at all. And then in the other 12 hours, you're only allowed like vegetarian food, no animal product, which in my opinion, it's even worse because like in Ethiopia, which is a hot country, 12 hours without water, without, so it's kind of funny, you know, when you look at monotheist religions, because in Judaism as well, they do have fasting. And it's all about this, not only the torture of the body, but it's sort of like as if this body, you need to torture it in order to be closer to God. I mean, that
they even say that, right? They say you're supposed to suffer so you can, like,
yes,
the suffering
that
is good.
idea that you need to suffer
Yeah.
in order to gain God's blessings and to go to heaven. You know, the whole idea of, you know, it's like the you know, the fraction of the Catholics, you know, the Apostate, they call it, like, you know, they beat themselves, or like Shia in Muslims, where they just beat themselves, and it's part of the same ideology where you are like, you need to suffer in order to get to the paradise, and it's funny when
it's a purification.
Yes,
the word that I've heard is, you know, you're doing it to purify yourself.
And it's about what they say, you know, it's about like they want to discipline yourself. You discipline yourself. And for me, there is nothing, there is no discipline about fasting.
Well, for one thing, if that is good, you should do it all year round.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
but again, you know, like it's this, you know, we go back to the original idea of deconstructing Islam is this brainwashing of ever since you're kid and young, is like, you know, this is something good, and you don't need to question about it. You don't question, just do.
Except it's more
And
the
the
other
minute
side.
you
If you
question-
don't do it, feel bad.
Yeah, and the minute you question, you're a bad person. It's like, no, don't, you know, and that's the problem with religion, any religions in general, and it's like, it just doesn't make any, you know, at the bottom line of religions is that there is no sense. There is no logical sense where, you know, I'm not a scientist, you know, maybe, you know, Usama can tap into that, you know, he's the scientist one. But, you know, like, there is no logical sense, you know, there is no, you know, as we say, 1 + 1 = 2. Not in religion at all. It's all about, this is it, this is how it is. You take it and keep your mouth shut.
And it isn't take it or leave it. It's take it or you're dead. No.
Yes.
Well, but apart from the actual specific this specific aspect in Islam, any kind of behavior that is taxing, that requires some expense on the part of the worshipper, this is a kind of a signaling for the society as a whole that you're actually committed, and it's something that would perpetuate that particular ritual, or make it so that people view it with reverence. Now, if we want to talk about fasting in particular for Islam, there is a very famous hadith that in which Muhammad is supposedly quoting Allah directly, where it says that fasting is unlike other rituals, is specifically done for Allah. So it is supposedly something that is done in connection with that personal relation that you're supposed to be having with God. However, when you're looking at how this actually works, there is a very public display of what's happening here. So if you go to a Muslim country and you see someone who is not fasting, they are likely to be either denigrated or even punished or imprisoned because of that. There are laws against being against eating during Ramadan. And so one wonders, if that's supposed to be something that's between the person and his God, why is it that the public aspect of this is so important? But
because it's for mind control, and it's for society to do it.
Exactly. But aside from that, when you're actually looking at how the society looks like during Ramadan, and Rami, you might have not experienced that, but
it's miserable.
the whole society grinds to a halt.
Can I tell you my experience? We should do that a little bit. Each one of us say our experience when we were Muslims, whatever, doing Ramadan, and also maybe what happened to us afterwards. But I did spend 1 year in Syria. I was 10 years old, and I remember, and I did fast for some of it, but there was one day I wasn't fasting, and I ran up to somebody in the street, or they come up to me and said, "Are you fasting?" And I said, "Yes." I didn't feel like dealing with the fact, which I wasn't. And he told me to open my mouth, and I opened my mouth, and he said, "You're not fasting." And I don't know what he saw in my mouth that told him I'm not fasting. But
this is an old trick. This is an old trick. The way they used to do that in school, and I used to refuse because I was like not fasting. Because the last time, you know, after 12, I didn't fast because I was thinking this is bullshit. But you know, apparently, when you're fasting, your tongue, the surface of it, it's more whitish because it's a bit dry.
Yeah.
So they know that you're fasting. If it is normal color, then you are not fasting. So they know that.
So here's the first lesson for everybody. Don't fuck up what I did. If you're trying to hide your that you're not fasting and somebody says open your mouth, don't fucking open your mouth.
There's another test, so to speak. They would come to your knuckle and then do this. If
yes, oh my gosh, yeah. You know,
if you're dehydrated, then the skin is not going to go back to normal as fast, and so that's
that doesn't sound like a very good test, does it?
Well, it's probably not, because people are not going to be hydrated to the same level. Skin is different and so on. But this is a kind of a schoolyard thing where mostly kids are going to be talking to each other. Are you fasting or not? That's that. At least that's
which I want to say to everyone, and this is gonna come up in the video I have prepared from Apostate Aladdin. You know what we've been saying so far. Maybe we haven't said the words. But what they're trying to do is shame us and guilt us. And it's internalized. Almost everyone has it internalized now. So you're just doing it to yourself. But the way the society keeps reminding you of it is, well, everyone's trained without realizing it to say things like, you know, are you fasting? Or did you, you know, I remember a basic one. There was this, I was already an ex-Muslim. And this guy from the mosque that I knew from years ago came up to me and he said, haven't seen you at the mosque in a while. Now, that question on its own shouldn't be shaming or guilt tripping. And I didn't feel that way. But that is what it is for, even if he doesn't know that's what it's for.
But you know what I mean?
Because it's not his fucking goddamn business. Why would he ask?
Exactly. But you
and
know
the way
what,
I replied was interesting. I was like, yeah, you're right. I haven't been there in a while. But that was it. Like, that's the plain way to answer the question. You're right.
No, you know what, Rami? You know, it's I used to be like that. I used to be a bit shy when people is like, how's your, you know, are you fasting? We haven't seen you in the mosque or whatever. So I was like, always like, yeah, you know, I was always shy about it. And then I realized that with these people, you need to be rude, because they don't understand the language of, you know, this is a private thing.
Boundaries.
Don't ask me, you know. I'm like, so are you fasting? And I'm saying, no, I will not.
Danny, we're not hearing you right.
Like this day, and I would say, like, you know, and when people say, so, you know, you're not coming to Friday prayer? And I was like, no, I don't pray. You know, and I would say proudly, like the last time I prayed, I was maybe 10, 11 years old.
Now, so you were
like shocked. So they are like shocked, and then they are like,
you were a Muslim
you don't know
that,
how to deal with me. I'm sorry?
You were a Muslim saying that you're not praying? Or you
What
were
do you
an ex-Muslim saying that you're not praying?
No. I'm like, I just say I don't pray, you know, like.
So no one even asked you if you're a Muslim or not. They just asked if you're praying.
No, like they were like, well, they know that I come from a Muslim family, so they assume that I remember I was, you know, I was born and lived in Qatar, so they were like, you know, Qatar was like a bit conservative back in the days, and so in the beginning I was like always hiding, and you know, like, oh my gosh, Ramadan and da. And then, you know, I was annoyed by, you know, this is not, as you said, it's not your damn business, you know, like, don't ask me something that has nothing to do with you. So in the beginning, I used to like, yeah, inshallah, no,
people should see it as rude. So in America, to give some people context, in America, if anybody asks a woman, "How old are you?" that's seen as rude, and no one is supposed to ask that.
Yes.
Well, you can also look back at the history of why this is actually considered to be okay, and it's encouraged, because go back to the Medinan society right at the beginning of Islam, when Islam was just forming, and Muhammad was still trying to get a foothold as the ruler of the place. He needed people to show some public display of loyalty, and that included several things. The first one was prayers. So you need to show up to the mosque as if it's a kind of a military display to show that you are waking up, especially for the Fajr, for the morning prayers, that you have the ability to come and show that you are there. Fasting is the same thing. And so what happened then was that a system of mutual censorship started forming, and that's basically what sustained that kind of thing throughout the history of Muslim societies.
No, it's true. And the thing is, I think it's a Middle Eastern thing where they're very, whether you are Muslim or not, what I noticed in the Middle Eastern societies is that they're very nosy. Like, they want to know everything. So including
which is actually not. Yeah, this is not something completely different or completely separate from Islam. I mean, we cannot really separate culture from religion.
No, but I mean, even with my Christian friends, they're very nosy.
We're talking about 1400 years of having that reality. So I'm sure that whatever reality that we had before that, all the differences that you might have had in the region have been more or less evened out, so that more or less everybody is going to be acting the same way. Because eventually, when you're talking about Christians, they were also forced to be acting in a certain way throughout most of Islamic history if they wanted to maintain their religion.
No, I mean, so in a way, that thing. So I now use that tactic, which is shocking. If people ask me, I just rude and say, no, I don't fast and I don't pray.
So let's give people context. In your context, you're an old man. You're financially independent. You're in a country that isn't an Islamic country. So that's like the easiest category to deal with. It's the easiest way to be able to live your life without having to, follow everyone else's dictates, specifically on the issue of Ramadan, but also on the issue of openly living as an ex-Muslim. Okay. But let's also speak to the other groups. The hardest case is you're living in one of these Muslim majority countries. You're not financially independent. You're living with your parents still. And let's go further. It's the more strict kind of parents. But now here's where it gets hazy. I think there's people who worry what their parents would do. They in their minds, over-exaggerate what they would do. And so the kid doesn't act, then doesn't do anything, thinking the parents would have a really bad reaction. Apostate Aladdin actually gave this example from his own experience.
That's actually my own experience as well, actually.
Really? I want you to talk about it right now. But so Apostate Aladdin said he finally talked to his parents about him being, an ex-Muslim, and he was surprised by their reaction. And their reaction was something like, okay, to each his own kind of thing. And he was kind of mad at them because he thought they should have said that was that way a long time ago. And he had a different view. He had a different conception of how his parents would react. So go ahead, Sam, explain yours.
Well, so because I stopped fasting and praying relatively early on, not too early, maybe late teens, because before that I was really trying hard. As I felt I was slipping away from religion, I started going more to the mosque, especially during Ramadan. I was really trying to get into the religion as
the
much
worse sins you did in the other 11 months, the more you went to the mosque in that 12th month, right?
Well, it's not that. It's the fact that I had those doubts that became so prevalent, and I could no longer feel that I actually belonged. And I had that feeling of guilt that if I don't actually deal with that, I might actually end up outside of the religion. So
you were afraid of that.
I tried to fight that as much as possible, but then after a while, it's no longer sustainable. And so for many years, I lived with my parents in the same house, financially dependent on them, emotionally also didn't want to hurt their feeling, coming out as an ex-Muslim, and basically
You didn't want them to be upset at you. Is it more like that?
not just upset at me, but themselves also upset.
Oh yeah. My
Yeah.
parents are gonna feel like they're bad parents if I don't act like a good child. Okay.
Like
So-
to disappoint them, you know,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Because from their perspective also, they're going to be so worried. Our child now is going to hell, essentially.
Yeah.
And so I didn't speak out, and for several years I lived like this. Not that they didn't suspect anything, because I wasn't praying. I wasn't. I was just ostensibly not fasting. I was actually eating that, but they just didn't know, or didn't care to know.
Or they knew and didn't say it to you.
Yeah, but the point here was that I didn't actually explicitly say anything about it, for fear of essentially hurting them more than getting myself hurt by whatever action that they're going to do, because I knew that they loved me. I just felt that I would feel guilty if I did something to hurt them.
Yeah.
And so that happened until I actually essentially left my parents' home back in 2004. So that was, and it lasted for 6 or 7 years.
6 or 7 years on your own without them that you haven't.
No. 6 or 7 years living with them with that kind of.
I see.
Yeah.
You know, it goes down to what Usama said. You know, it's the guilt feeling, whether from society, from parents, from religion, from God. You know, it's that the guilt feeling of, like, I still remember when I decided not to fast, and I was hiding it. And as your friend said, you know, like later on, I found out that my parents didn't really care. But because I was, you know, brought up in Qatar, and in schools there, it's very, very, you know, rigid, and you know, you have to be fasting and pray and where at home we kind of, it was like a more of a, I would say, a secular kind of surrounding, but still my mother used to do Ramadan, and my sisters. But you know, when my mother found out that I'm not fasting, she was like, why? And I said, I just don't like it. You know, I need to eat in the morning, I need to drink, and I don't believe in it. And she was like, okay, it's your life. So I was like, I wasn't expecting this, but the guilt feeling, still I had that, because I was like, what if there is God? What if there is, you know, hell and heaven? And still I was doubting that age when I was 14, 13, 15, you know, it was like, still you are in that phase of forming what your sense of beliefs, and then there is that pressure of, you know, the whole idea of, well, the whole society is like this, why am I different? Could it be that, it can be that all of them are wrong and I am right? And then you realize that it's not about right and wrong, it's about the indoctrination of, like, the whole society is I would say brainwashed. And
Well, you weren't looking at all humans. You were only looking at the humans near you.
Yes.
In the same
And
pocket
then,
of the earth.
yeah, and then you know, slowly, because you know, it's not like, you know, I had this discussion with a guy who was like, it's like, when did you become an ex-Muslim? And I was like, you know, there wasn't a specific day or date that I woke up and I decided I'm
It's a
not a Muslim
process.
anymore. It's a process. It took years, and it was slowly, like I was literally deconstructing, you know, brick by brick, layer by layer, you know, until, you know, I and fasting Ramadan was one of these layers, and you realize that what is it for? What's the point? For me, any action, whenever I look at it, whether in religion or in life, and I look at like, what's the point? What is the point of this? Even at work, like sometimes when I'm asked to attend meetings, and I was like, what is the point of attending a meeting?
Those are the most useless meetings when you don't know the point of it going in.
Exactly. Like once I was attending this meeting, that at the end of the meeting, there's like, oh, any feedback? And I said, you know what, guys, I'm sorry to say, don't get me wrong, and I'm not being rude, but that meeting could have been in an email.
Yep.
Like we spend 1.5 hours. So again, it goes back to what is the point, and no one could give you, apart from, yes, it teach you how to self-discipline. Well, yoga teaches you how to self-discipline. Sports can teach you self-discipline. I don't know, there are hundreds of ways to discipline yourself. But why should I deprive?
Well, this one is sanctioned by God, so that's the difference, right? Or by
and then they go by, yeah, but in order for you to feel for the poor people, and it's like, that's bullshit, because at sunset you forget about the poor people and the and starving people in Africa, because you literally dive into water.
At least in my family, every time was a feast. You were gorging.
Exactly.
We have so much food. So much food. It's
people,
nothing like what's happening in Africa or wherever.
No, people gain weight in Ramadan. The majority of people in Ramadan, they gain weight.
Yes.
And it's
very empathetic of them.
It's not only because they're eating too much, because of the fact that they end up being essentially lazy, and the society encourages that. You see that public places stop operating very early during the day. People are very angry, especially smokers. They don't want to talk to anybody until they have their first cigarette once.
Oh my God.
They have a cigarette before the food, am I right?
Like they use it as an excuse. Don't talk to me, I'm fasting. And
Exactly. So everybody is angry at everybody. So
don't talk to me, I'm fasting. That's hilarious.
No, it's true, wallahi.
That's exactly what they would say. Yeah.
It's like like I'm in a bad temper, I'm fasting, don't talk to me now. And it's like, I need work, this is work. It's like, and once I had a fight with a colleague of mine in Jordan, and I said, listen, if you are like, how would you translate this? I said, I don't know, like like it's like you're fasting for yourself.
Don't.
How would you translate this, Osama?
I don't know. Don't give me a favor.
Like as if you're doing me a favor. I don't give a fuck. No, excuse me. But like, I don't care that you're fasting. You're doing it for your God. So if you cannot fast, don't fast. But either you fast and continue your life in a normal way, or simply don't. And I told him, I said, one of the reasons that's why I don't fast, because I'm a smoker and I need water in the morning. I need my coffee in the morning. I'm sorry, if I don't drink coffee in the morning, I'm not a human being. I become a zombie. I need my caffeine in the morning. So, and I know myself. So I'm sorry. But again, I can tell I'm privileged in that regard. I am, I'm one of the few, like the minority, where thank God, in a way,
not to thank God though.
I was brought up in a very tolerant family, that they were not forcing religion into us. I mean, maybe my dad, when I was a kid, he took me, like, it wasn't like he forced me, but he said, like, I'm going to the mosque on Friday prayer. Would you like to come with me? And I was like, yeah, I would go. But again, it wasn't like you have to go and you have to do this. So, but again, I am the minority here, because I know a lot of families, they force it into into their children, in order later on it becomes part of their daily routine, and it becomes on, like, it's funny how religion, not just Ramadan, but everything related to religion, how it what's the word, like, not brainwash, but like it blocks everything else. Like, I have a friend of mine, super intelligent, he's got 2 masters, 1 PhD, he's an engineer, and he's like you can talk to him about politics and everything. He's really amazing. When it comes to religion, the IQ is 0. All of a sudden, the IQ is 0. But then once I had this discussion with him, and I said, and I was telling him, come on, you're an intelligent man. And then I realized, and once, after years of knowing him, and I said, because he's a very good businessman, like he knows how to trade with, stock markets and everything. So he's a good gambler. And I said, you know what? You're just gambling with religion. Deep down, I am sure 100% that you don't believe in that bullshit. But what you do, you pray 5 times a day, you fast Ramadan, you went to Hajj a couple of times and Umrah a couple of times, knowing that you are covering the bases. Just
you bought a lottery ticket.
Exactly, just in case it's for you. And I said, don't, because I don't want to insult your intelligence. Because
and
that's
it doesn't pay out.
I don't want to insult your intelligence, because I know. And he was laughing when I was telling him. He was laughing, and I said, I know that I'm right, because knowing you're super smart, super intelligent, super knowledgeable. Like, he knows religion by heart. He read a lot of books. And I said, don't tell me, knowing how smart you are with an IQ of 1,000, don't tell me you never doubt and you never, but for you, it's a gamble. You're covering the bases.
So did he agree? You said he laughed. To me, sounds like agreeing, but did he say yes?
Yes, because he couldn't argue back, because he was like,
yeah. But they say that argument.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're looking at this from the perspective of many people, including someone like Blaise Pascal, who formalized this idea as the Pascal wager, where you basically try to trick the God into believing that you're actually a believer by doing whatever rituals that are required. There's a kind of an inherent dishonesty about this approach. But I can see that some people might think, well, I'm not going to lose anything. I'm going to lose some money doing an expensive ritual like Hajj, for example. But apart from that, I'm going to lead my life the way that I want.
I was told that, like, once there was a guy who was telling me, he's like, Hadi, what are you going to lose? You just pray, the minimum. You don't have to even pray 5 times a day. If you pray, so-and-so and go every Friday and do Ramadan. He said, what is religion? It's all about this. And he said, just in case. He was telling me, this one, guy at work. He said, like, what you're going to lose? And I said, guys, religion is supposed to be, for me, it's part of my spirituality, which we were talking about the other time. It's about beliefs. It's about, it's not pretending. Why should I? And it was like this guy. At that time we were talking about the Palestinian issue. Is that I said, I'm, it's exactly like believing in the the political aspect of the Palestinian issue. It's not that I am pretending. It's what I believe, and this is something for me. Religion is either I believe in it and then I do it properly, or I don't. And the whole,
that's the way people should live. And I want to bring up a related issue. Usama, I think, already kind of brought it up. The concept of doing something not because you think it's right, but because it's so. I'll say the word people pleasing. The idea of people pleasing, pleasing people.
Yes.
Not because you think it's the right thing, but because you want to make them happy.
Virtue signaling in a way.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are doing this, and I want to try to help people undo this from themselves because, you know, in a lot of ways, our families, or at least today in today's world, our families sort of indoctrinate us to become people pleasers, because that's the only way we don't get punished, for example. Okay. But the better way to live your life, and this is how people end up when they're old, you know. I remember my professor telling me, I was in my mid-20s, he was maybe mid-40s or a little bit more than that. And I remember him saying something like, as you get older, you care less about what people think.
Absolutely. I totally confirm that. Like now
we
I
should
am
start really early though. It should be day fucking one.
But you know what? This is, I think, human nature. Like, let's be honest. It's a worldwide thing. You know, when we are young, we want, you know, we want the approval. We want the confirmation.
When your parents withhold love unless you do what they say, which is almost every parent.
No, but it's not about just parents, because later on, like, you know, for example, at work, when you are young, you want that kind of confirmation and validation.
You already got indoctrinated in your childhood.
People. Yes, but like this is normal. Like you need the validation.
It's very normal, and it's horrible.
It is horrible. And then, you know, for example, like I used to really like work hard in order, when in my 20s, is like, I don't want to fail. I don't want to disappoint my boss. I don't want to, like, you know, I should know this. Like, I cannot, like, it was for me saying I don't know was a big sin. Like, no, I need to do this. And then the older you get, like, you know, now I know my qualities, kind of. I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. So I feel very comfortable now when people ask me at work, like, Hani, can you do this? And I'm like, no, I don't know it. I don't know. And I'm very comfortable. I don't feel bad. Because I don't need the validation anymore. And it's the same thing with religion. You need always the validation of, you know, if you do this, you get this. You know, if you pray, you go to heaven. If you, I don't know, do fasting, you
external rewards,
you get hasanat. You get hasanat. And it's like, you know, it's always this validation. And people use it, families use it, society, schools. So it's all in there. And unfortunately, this is how societies are, not just in the Middle East, worldwide. But one thing that I would like to draw your attention to is that lately in the Middle East, I have to say, things are loosening up. Yes, there are still people who are very rigid about it, but now more and more, for example, I'm talking about Jordan, more and more there are restaurants and cafes open during daytime in Ramadan. Not like they still need to close the windows or whatever, you know, but still, like, more and more, like, it's not impossible. When I was in Jordan, I was like always going to restaurants and cafes, and even there are even restaurants where they serve alcohol. The only rule is that you can serve alcohol after sunset. So and funny enough, now I heard that Saudi Arabia, they're allowing restaurants to be open and serve food. So things are changing. And the same thing when I was in Egypt a few years ago in Ramadan, there were like also a few places where they were open. So things are changing. It's not up to the level of what we expect, but it is changing. And also the fact that there are, because of the internet and social media, now people are already talking about, like, if you fast, fine, but don't impose it on me. So more and more you have voices talking about how don't impose your ideology on me. It's like, okay, you want to pray, fine. You want to fast, fine. It's like that video. I don't know if you saw it, 2 days ago. I saw this video of a guy in London in the bus.
I saw it.
Yeah, and he was like, "Oh, I'm fasting while you're eating," and she was like,
"This woman, she was like what you described. Why the fuck are you bothering me? Let me eat." Yeah. Although I think she talked too much probably and should have just said "fuck off." But it kept going. The video kept going. He kept biting her, and she kept arguing, the opposite. She's going to continue eating.
And now in the Middle East, more and more people you have where it's like, yeah, I'm not fasting. Fuck off. Don't bother me. So it is happening, but it will take time. If I can say there is a light at the end of the tunnel, because when I look at Christianity, which is 600 years older than Islam, and you see how 500 years ago or even 200 years ago in Europe, it was awful, with the church, and it was kind of the same thing as in the Middle East. So in a way, when I see where Christianity is now, I'm like, there is hope. Islam is gonna be that way, but I think we need another.
Well, a lot of people are just only thinking about their current life right now, and only this Ramadan rather than next year's Ramadan.
Yeah.
So let's stick to practical things for now. Do you guys mind if we put on the couple of tips from the video I had prepared?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So, and then
number 3, use the excuses. I don't mean that word with negative connotations. In Islam, there are criteria that can excuse you from the obligation of fasting. These include traveling, being pregnant, breastfeeding, having your period, extreme hunger or thirst, and being too old or too sick. So consider getting pregnant to skip Ramadan. I'm just kidding, don't do that. But when Ramadan is over, you're supposed to fast the days that you missed or pay a fidya, a fee that roughly equals 2 meals for one person. But if you intentionally miss a day for no religiously valid reason, you're supposed to punish yourself with 2 months of fasting or a much bigger donation. So unfortunately, this doesn't mean that a Muslim is allowed to skip any or all days of Ramadan if they don't want to fast. In fact, many feel too guilty to consider their hunger or thirst extreme enough for an exemption, be it because of internalized shame or societal pressure. But if your goal is to make it through Ramadan more easily, consider using some of these excuses if you can get away with it, even if that means that you'll have to make up for your fast after Ramadan is over. At least then you can eat and drink in public in front of people who don't know about your little arrangement. So if you're a woman, maybe add a few days to your period. Unfortunately, some abusive mothers might go as far as checking for physical evidence of their girl's period, but even if that happens, you can claim that it's a period pain, not menstruation. If you're sick or can get away with pretending.
Oops, you guys remember that movie?
Yeah, of course.
Take a few days off.
What was the name?
Ferris Bueller.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That movie is amazing.
Yeah,
and the whole movie is him skipping out of school. So the analogy here is skipping out of Ramadan.
Yeah.
From pretending to fast. And if you're supposed to take oral medication during fasting hours, consider breaking your fast on grounds of it being too disruptive to adjust your medication or dosage or timing. And if you can get away with donating meals instead of making up for your missed days, that's even better. You reduce the suffering for yourself and for someone else. Yay you! But even when employing these excuses, you might face some resistance in the form of societal pressure and shaming, which brings us to the next tip. Number 4, drop the shame and guilt. Some Muslims might jokingly tease you or intentionally shame you for not fasting. Whether your strategy is to tell them to mind their own business or to give them an Islamically valid excuse, what's important is that you don't succumb to their groupthink mentality. The truth is that many of them aren't even doing it intentionally to harm you. It's simply what they were conditioned to do, so they do it mindlessly. One example is a question that is said jokingly around Ramadan time. Are you fasting or is it the same as every year? With the joke being that you skip fasting every year because you're lazy. It's not even funny, but teasing and bullying is considered humor in some parts of the Arab world, unfortunately. Those who say this are often just repeating what they've heard said to them 1,000 times already. So try to not take it personally. And if they're jokingly or seriously bringing up the topic, just remember to take the path of least resistance. Don't feel ashamed for sneakily eating and drinking and lying about it. Don't think of it as moral failure to tell the truth. Because when you take an objective viewpoint, you'll find that there's nothing morally shady about lying to avoid forced starvation. But if you're an ex-Muslim, you might still have shame and guilt embedded deep in you from your time as a believer. So try to be mindful of that and ask yourself, is what I'm doing actually a crime deserving of guilt and shame? Or is it only shameful to a believer? And I mentioned earlier that you
and I want to add one more point. If you do feel ashamed for these things, don't shame yourself for having done that, because that itself is a mistake. You know what I mean? Like you made what you see as a mistake, or somebody else sees it as a mistake. You feel ashamed about that. But now that you know shame is wrong, and then you feel shame, you might feel shamed about that.
Yeah.
And it's recursive. I've seen people deal with this, and when I pointed it out to them, they were kind of shocked because they didn't know the loop they were in. It's a logical loop, you know?
should have empathy for someone who is fasting, but don't let that enable shaming. For instance, a lot of Muslims complain that those who aren't fasting, even for Islamically valid reasons, should hide any signs of having eaten or drank because otherwise they'll be taunting those who fast. They shame you, either by presuming that you are a bad Muslim and have no valid reason to eat, or by painting you as a provocateur towards those who do fast. On the other hand, they might expect or even demand that everything shifts to a Ramadan schedule, from work hours and restaurant hours to how everyone behaves in public. This entitlement doesn't apply to all Muslims, of course, but unfortunately a lot of us ex-Muslims are very familiar with these experiences. That's partly because in Muslim majority countries and communities, the world revolves around Islam, so everything is seen through a Muslim-centric lens. Ergo, being open about not fasting is viewed as an aggression towards Muslims, which is nowhere near the truth. If you would like to avoid eating or drinking in front of a Muslim, hopefully that's coming from a good place, because you don't want to remind them of their predicament of choosing starvation over disobeying a terrifying God. But don't do it because you feel ashamed or guilty. A few years ago, I was with a friend in a non-Muslim country. I was about to take a sip of water and a hijabi lady walked past me, and I felt immense shame and guilt. Shame because I suspected that she was judging me, thinking that I should be fasting, and guilt because I felt responsible for her thirst. And when I explained that to my friend, she couldn't get my perspective and just told me to drink unapologetically. She was right about the conclusion, but her approach didn't help me at the time. My indoctrination kicked in and told me that the Quran is true, the kuffar are heartless and mean towards Muslims. But the reality is that most non-believers go out of their way to congratulate Muslims during Ramadan and accommodate their fasting. My friend just had a short temper and a strong personality. The reality is that I don't know what the hijabi woman was thinking about me, if anything at all. But even if she gave me a nasty look or a passive-aggressive remark, like I've experienced in the past, I learned to not let that shaming method get to me. It's a form of community policing that many participate in without some big agenda or nefarious intention. And the reality is that I'm not responsible for her thirst. I can empathize with her, and I should not intentionally remind her of her struggle, but I shouldn't feel guilty for drinking as she happened to walk by. So if you're in a Muslim country and it's safe enough to eat or drink in public, and you'd like to normalize that sight to Muslims so that they get more used to it, go ahead. If you're in a non-Muslim country, you don't have to avoid eating just because there's a Muslim in the vicinity. You can be empathetic and accommodating without going as far as pretending to be Muslim. So instead of all of this shame and guilt, congratulate yourself for doing what's best for you. Whether that's secretly looking out for yourself or publicly not participating in fasting, you're doing a great job, so keep at it.
And I recommend everyone who found that helpful to watch the rest of that video. There's 3 other tips. And I have the link in the description. What is it?
Yes. Who's he? He's very good.
That is Apostate Aladdin. He's a really big YouTuber, ex-Muslim YouTuber. Very helpful to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been trying to connect with him. We're trying to do something together.
Speaking of which, you remember I I saw some of his videos on that page, الملحدين العرب, and then I started following him. But like, I don't know, like I don't see him anymore on YouTube. Qusay, I don't know if you heard or saw. Yes, Qusay Bitar. Whatever happened to him? Because like,
I mean,
it's
he still produces videos.
Really, I haven't seen any of his videos lately. I don't know. Maybe because I'm following his YouTube channel, but I don't know.
I don't follow him closely. I mean, when he used to be part of the group, we would interact, but recently when he went his own way, I don't really follow that closely.
Yeah, which like I don't know. I think maybe we should do in Arabic one episode about the group, because like.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, most definitely. Given that a lot of the content that we have can be directly related to some of the stuff that we have on the various Facebook groups and all the activities that we have there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
not only we'll have to figure out well, what would the first topic be if we did an episode in Arabic? What would the first topic be, you think?
I was thinking about it the other day. Like, I joined this group. Like, I joined the group more than 10 years ago. I have to say, maybe in 2014.
You're talking about the Facebook group?
Yes.
What's the name of it? Say it out loud.
الملحدين العرب or something like that.
Arab Atheist Network and Forum.
Yeah. And to be quite honest, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Usama, but like back then, it was really informative. Like you would see people, respectfully arguing, talking about topics, really handling. Now, it's disgusting. It's absolutely like, if I am the admin, like honestly, it's not because I'm a dictator or whatever, but like some of these posts are like, I don't know what's the point. Like you can deconstruct Islam, but you don't have to like attack Muslims, if you know what I mean. Like a lot of these posts, they're attacking Muslims and broad brushing.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in the ex-Muslim subreddit also.
They broad brush them in a way. They do exactly what these religious Muslims are doing for others, and they don't see that actually a lot of them, not to mention that there are people who are, Christians who want to, attack Muslims through, you know what I mean? Like, and then if you tell them, it's like, yeah, what about Christianity? And then they get,
Well, let me give a context here, because if you go back to the beginning of this, when the Facebook group actually was established, it came in the wake of what actually happened to the forum, which was hacked, and the actual identity of the person behind it was leaked, and there was a personal threat to him, and so the group was moved to Facebook, and that's that it was then maintaining the kind of.
Can you say that again? Like what happened? I'm sorry. What's the history behind it? Because I have no idea.
Right. So it was a standalone forum for several years, and it's still available in a kind of a diminished format. The archive is still out there, and you can actually browse. Sometimes we take parts of the stuff that was posted on that forum, and we repost it in the magazine. So we actually call that the parent forum, and so for us, that's where the شبكة was that forum originated.
I remember, and then they switched to this.
And so with time, several things happened, including in 2020, where they suspended our main group and we had to switch to one of the spare groups. And as a result of that, Facebook really restricted what we were able to do. And so as a result of this, we had to relax some of the administrative restrictions that we had before that in order to maintain the community and to grow it a little bit. Admittedly, right now, it's not in its best states. So you're absolutely right in that sense. But part of this was to have the situation recover, because for many years Facebook was really acting against us in a very strong way.
No, because now, honestly, it's like how to say this in English. It's like we call it in Arabic. It's radeh. It's like radeh. It's actually, you don't get, like, if you scroll into the post, you won't get any useful information about anything, and it pisses me off, because it used to be good. And I was also participating in discussions back in 2013, 2014.
Well, what I heard is a lot of the people that were useful just stopped participating. They moved on with their lives and did other things. And what was left was all the people that are not useful.
No, absolutely. Like
to a great extent, the situation there is not great right now. Some action. I mean, I'm not speaking as part of the administrative team. I'm just talking about this as also a user. I used to spend a lot of time there, both moderating and working on the administrative part, but also participating. And unfortunately, you're right. The situation is very far different from what it used to be.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And especially I remember when going back to fasting and Ramadan, when there was a lot of discussions about Ramadan, and then you see people who are with or against really arguing and discussing it respectfully. Like, you would see some religious people who would bring links about I don't know what scientist who talks of the benefits of Ramadan, and then you have atheists on the other hand talking, and it was very enriched discussions. It was very, very good. But then it took really a horrible turn, I would say, in the last few years, where it's like, to be quite honest, I just go there to be entertained. Like when I see people birdahul ba'd, as we say, and it's just like, it's and I think I would like to maybe do one episode in Arabic about this, and to maybe talk to the moderators of the page to.
So I would need you guys to come up with a title and description, all written all in Arabic, because I can't write it.
I can do that.
Me, you guys have to, like, you'll have to do more for this episode than what you've been doing.
It's it would also be a good idea to maybe broaden the scope a little bit.
Yes.
I mean, it's not just that particular group. The whole Facebook scene in the recent few years has completely changed for various reasons. Some of it has to do with Facebook policies. Some of it has to do with individual groups and what's happening.
And not only that, it became an old thing, like with the young generation, they don't really use Facebook. They are into TikTok and Instagram and elsewhere.
All the other social media too. A lot of them would be on Reddit. Now, Arabic speaking, I don't know where those people are. Like, so Arabic speaking people, new ones, let's say 20 years old, just finding the internet and doing things. Where are they going?
Listen, it depends on the country, because like this is my job as a communication manager. Like we do a landscape. So for example, Facebook is still #1 social media in Egypt, where in Saudi Arabia, it's funny enough, it's Twitter or X. It's number
In most
one.
of the Gulf, I would say it's
Jordan, for
And
example.
let me ask a
Instagram.
dumb question. You can do Twitter in Arabic?
Yes, and you can have a podcast in Twitter. I'm following some discussions on Twitter actually.
So that's what
they're
did
quite
it.
good.
That's why it changed a lot. Twitter is
Yeah.
a big,
And,
there's way more social media and groups out there.
Yeah, and then you have also live stream and on Instagram. So, for example, Jordan, Instagram is number one. So now the landscape is also changing because of TikTok. For the last, let's say, 3-4 years, you have TikTok is coming now, and with the young generation who are, let's say, 25 and less, they are into mostly TikTok. Like it's number one,
Which is
for
just
that
short
generation.
videos. I mean, one thing that's changing is people are getting away from text and going more towards video, right?
Yes.
And the
Yes.
shorter the formats, because if we want to talk about the attention span of,
Yes, attention span.
supposedly of this generation, it's more geared towards something like TikTok.
I'll just say something about myself. I watch more video than I read articles.
Yes.
Or read
Yeah.
Reddit posts.
Yeah. Even
I
at
think
work.
I think for me it's, and I think this is true for everybody. I'm going to make that assumption right now. Talking is the more natural language. Writing is the skill you learn second. Talking is the skill you learn first.
Yes.
As a kid.
That's true. That's true. But also,
it's a lot harder to learn the writing skills and the reading skills and the reading comprehension skills and figuring out someone's tone from the writing, and then figuring out how to make a certain tone from your writing so you don't confuse.
Yeah.
With this, it's so much easier. So I think more people are going to be doing this, both producing the video and watching it, than compared to text.
Visuals are more attractive than text, that's for sure, and that's why you have people looking at videos. But at the same time, as Usama just mentioned, is like the attention span. So that's why, for example, in my work, we make sure that the longest video is 90 seconds, a minute and a half, because yeah. So sometimes that's part of the challenge I get, is like, how can I get, and especially in our work, which is very heavy, and sort of like, you want to have, like, for example, I did the other day an interview with a woman from work that she just came out of a war zone. And she was talking, and I couldn't stop her. And the interview was 11 minutes. Now, the challenge is how to take that 11 minutes and turn it into
get the best minute and a half, and it makes, wow. Were you able to do it?
Well, we are doing it. We are editing, and trying to get the main messages and sometimes when it is exceptionally interesting, we can make it in up to 2 minutes, but that's all about it.
Let me ask you something.
That's for social media. Otherwise, we put it in on YouTube.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask, actually, because what are you doing with the rest of the interview? Because I'm sure that it has a lot of content that's important.
Yes.
You cannot produce the whole 11 minutes into just 90 seconds and then throw away the rest.
No, what we do is, like, in big interviews, we put it on YouTube. But the downside about YouTube is that it doesn't have a lot of traffic compared to Instagram or TikTok or even Facebook. So you have that as well, but it's there. So we kind of put it as an archive, so it is there on YouTube. But if we want, what we do is that we put, the video on social media, like, the 90-second video, and then we put the link saying, if you want to see the whole episode, just click on the link.
That's the way to do it, of course. And by the way, I try to do that a little bit, where I cut up these videos into small chunks and tell them to watch the rest of it later or whatever. But and I don't know how well it works.
But we should.
There's a lot of shadow banning on this channel.
Yeah, we should do that in order to put it on Instagram, and say, right, like,
So
go ahead.
a lot, when I edit these videos, and actually live streams I don't edit, but I watch them so I can get the timestamps. Okay, once I have the timestamps, it's very easy for me to see the size of the chunks, right? And oftentimes the chunks are like 12 minutes, and that's still too long for any of the things. Very rarely I get a 3-minute chunk, and I'm like, oh, that's perfect. Make that a short. Put it on YouTube. Put it on TikTok.
Yeah.
And I'll get some views that way, but that's so little information anyway.
Yeah.
What we're doing is a completely different format. The long form format doesn't lend itself as easily. It might be for a promotional video, but not for an actual content delivery. You might end up getting maybe a quote that is memorable, or some kind of a line that captures a message in some way that can be put in a very quick video. But when it comes to the actual content, because very often it's a natural conversation. It's like right now we started with Ramadan, and now we're talking about a completely different topic. So something of this sort is very loose. It's not as easy to condense because its nature is very diffuse.
Yes. That's why, like, if we want to do one in Arabic and to cater to the audience of شبكة الملحدين العرب, I think we can, just see how, what are the topics that could be interesting, what are the things to be discussed.
Well, I think you need to gear it towards, what would make them want to come in the first place. Is it getting to call in? Is it getting to chat? Is it getting to ask us questions so we can answer them? I'm guessing the answer is yes to all these questions, right?
Exactly.
So
like,
we need to gear it towards getting them to come, regardless of what the topic is.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting, like, to have them come in, ask questions, because as you said earlier, a lot of them I can assume, I don't know, I'm assuming a lot of the people on that page are quite young, like, again, I'm assuming from the way the language they're using and the way they write, you can tell that their knowledge is not not up to that level.
It's varied. I don't
varied.
remember actually if I still have access to some of the statistics. But yeah, it's on the younger part, but maybe not as young as you might think. Because what's happening right now, and that actually connects to what we were talking about earlier. If you're comparing the situation right now to what we had, say, 10 years or even 20 years ago, let me give you an example. Back in 2002 or 3, I was on forums on the internet debating. It was mainly in English, but there were a few Arabic ones, including the former precursors of what eventually became the Shabakah. People then associated the ability to leave religion with a kind of an elite luxury form of thinking, where it was restricted to a set of people who are more intellectual, and so the kind of interaction that you would get was much more high quality. But right now, and this connects to what you said before, that things are loosening up. This means that the group that you have now is becoming larger, and it's including all sorts of people from all walks of life. And so you're going to get a sample that's now representative of the society. That's both a good thing and a bad thing, because it's going to mean that you're going to be engaging with people who might not be as well educated or as thoughtful as before. But at the same time, it means that you're looking at a wider audience. It means that the idea of criticizing religion in public is something that's becoming more mainstream than it was before, but at the expense of the quality and the type
Yeah.
of interaction.
No, it's true. So
we
I guess,
need some
it
sort
will
of
be,
title that says, "Come on here and ask us questions," and they would only be interested in that if maybe they already know who you guys are, who I am.
I have an idea. Why don't we do a post on the group in Arabic? We can say, we are planning to do an episode in Arabic. Can you suggest what are the topics that you would like to discuss?
Yeah,
And let's see what are the most topics that come to their minds, and then
Well, I don't even think we
let's
need
see.
to. I think it's fine to pick a topic that's maybe general or whatever, but also let people, in a sense, select a topic on the fly when they come in to ask.
No. It's not about selecting the topic, but it's for me to understand the landscape. Meaning, it would be interesting to see what are the things that that.
So then, the way I would
people-
ask the question is, if you were to come on the show and ask us questions, what would you ask?
If I want to venture based on my experience of that place, what people would come and ask, it's not going to be these meta ideas that.
No, it's going to be stuff like what happened in your life.
No. It's not even going to be that. It's going to be something very specific about some kind of a detail in religions. Let me give an example. If they're going to be talking to people who might be representing the administration of the group, they might say, "Prove to me that God doesn't exist." That's
Sure.
that's
Let's do that.
That's one of the questions that I would expect. Things of that sort. Things that.
For me, when people ask me that question, I say, "Well, prove it." ايش على من ادعى البينة على من ادعى. I always use that. I always say that because you claim it's not me. You're the one who claims that there is God.
I think what we would do is let each one of us answer.
Yeah.
The same question.
Yeah, sure.
Unless somebody maybe might ask a directed question to one of us.
Yeah.
We have, by the way, it's not the first time. We had been not ourselves, but we have been guests on a couple, 2 or 3 maybe YouTube channels before, talking about various aspects of the group and the magazine, and it was a kind of a talk show kind of thing. It wasn't really an interaction directly with our audience, but like what we're doing right now, you could have people making comments and so on. My experience from those, and we haven't done that in a while. I think the last one I did was maybe 3 years ago. It doesn't gain a lot of traction with our audience, unfortunately. You don't get people directly coming up with some specific thing, because here's how they use something like Facebook. And that's actually dictated by the way Facebook itself is designed. People go there the same way that they're using Facebook in their everyday life, because Facebook is integrating with their identity in maybe thinking about their daily interests, about the news, about going to a restaurant or whatever. And so it's not as dedicated as it is when we used to have forums, for example, where people would have a very well-defined idea that's formulated in a kind of a question that's going to instigate debate and discussion. No, it's going to be a two-liner that is thrown there, or a video that is shared with a comment, sometimes without a comment. It's very rare that you see something that's formulated in a deep enough way that is going to generate a lot of comments. And even when we end up having, there are still a few members who would come up with really nice, well thought out ideas. it doesn't really generate that much discussion. Like Hani said, the landscape is not what it used to. So I'm not that optimistic about the effectiveness of that kind of episode, but I think it's a good idea to try, because sometimes even if it doesn't generate the type of interaction that you're hoping for, at least it would be a kind of a probe to tell us what might work and what mightn't work, and therefore we can maybe build on it based on that.
And maybe we can link it to to have it on Facebook, but also to link it into Instagram, the live stream, if we can do that.
I'm using StreamYard, the free version. With the paid version, you can stream on multiple platforms simultaneously, but it's $50 a month, and I don't want to spend that.
No, but you can do a live stream on Instagram. I mean,
you mean just Instagram? Not use any,
Well, I
you
think
can do both Facebook and Instagram. That's what I understood.
I think because of the fact that they're from the same platform, it shouldn't be hard to make that happen.
Well, I don't think we would be using StreamYard then.
It would exclude probably YouTube then. But it doesn't have to be alive on YouTube. It can be posted as a separate video on YouTube.
But so I would maybe do a post on the group and then see put it in Arabic and say, okay, we're planning to do this in Arabic. What are the topics that you have in mind? What are the things that you would like to discuss?
Even ask the basic questions. Would you like to come and ask and chat and ask questions? Or would you like to call in?
Yeah, exactly.
Ask those two basic questions first.
Yeah, I think, that would be something interesting.
Yeah, no, and I also think, I actually like the idea because it's probably going to maybe raise some interest, wake some people up who might have maybe given up a little bit, to be honest, because I personally don't frequent the group as much as I used to.
Yeah, me too.
Well, one thing I'm sure will happen too is there's people who speak English and know English enough but don't watch our videos, but if they saw us in Arabic first and get interested that way, then they might follow our English content.
True, although I still feel that the type of there are certain things that we might be discussing here that might be a little bit novel to people who are English speakers, because they're not immersed in the culture. They don't actually get bombarded as they're growing up with those ideas. So an Arabic audience is going to be a little bit more savvy when it comes to the ideas, and would have a somewhat different perspective on the same topics. So they would be approaching the same ideas from a different perspective. And so the kind of overlap between the two types of audiences is not necessarily as clear as it might, as you might think. But that's
even if it's one person.
Well, yeah, it's. I mean, I'm speculating here based on what I usually sense people get, because the content that you have right now in Arabic is really it has proliferated so much. And you can find a lot of things, whether it's written or what we're doing right now, like a talk show. You have so many different people doing a lot of things. And so standing out in that way might not be as easy. But that's my guess.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely not standing out.
Well,
I mean, even the sort of audience we're going after, just because of the topics we're choosing and the way we talk about things, I don't think it's a huge group. Like you said earlier, it's the intellectual group.
Yeah, and that's why I think we need to, try some of the other topics that might be attractive for the audience, for the general audience, especially the ones like, for me, I'm interested for the ones who are still in the early stages of doubting. And I think because, and especially the young generation where, as we said earlier, they don't have the patience to read. You know, they.
So what if we did an episode inviting Muslims directly, doubting Muslims?
How would you, like, I don't know any doubting Muslims, but maybe on the group, like, you know, like what to
That's,
do.
That's what I mean. You would call out doubting Muslims in particular.
Yeah.
In English, we use those words. and I've seen, like, Apostate Aladdin does episodes where he brings on Muslims, and they, in one case, the concept is, you know, why do you believe in Islam? That's like the title of the live stream.
Yeah.
But then they kind of sometimes get into arguing matches instead of the guest explaining their why they believe in Islam. But I think that would be very helpful for people.
Yeah,
I think people who might be in stages of doubt might not be as forthcoming.
yes.
Yeah, but they would watch. And if we get one person that's brave enough, then 1,000 other people could be watching that.
What I'm saying is that my suspicion is that Muslims would be interested.
Yes.
Completely ex-Muslims would be interested. Those who are in between, coming up and talking, especially in the phase of doubt where you're actually you don't know where you are, that's the group that might be a little bit hard to attract.
I agree. Maybe they're going to be watching, but I don't think.
Watching. That's probably the case, because
you got to realize, though, some people who would see the term doubting Muslim, they would say, okay, I'm going to come here to convince you. They're not doubting at all, and they're coming here to what's the word?
Proselytize.
I can't see the word. Yeah, I can't see the word. And that's and by the way, that can be a bad thing, of course, because we could get someone on here that's kind of an asshole, and we don't really want to deal with them. But you know, that'll be in Arabic, and that'll be on you guys to treat that right. What am I gonna say?
Yeah.
Well, it's an experiment that is worth trying.
Worth trying for sure.
Yeah,
it's an experiment. Yes.
Why not?
All life is experiments.
Yeah, and why not? I mean, that's the whole point, that we're trying to reach out to those who doubt, those who believes, those who don't believe. For me, you know, they're all equal, because
you know, you can make it really how do I say this with marketing language? You could really grab them by saying something like, well, why don't you guys come convince us back to Islam?
Well, you know what? No, I don't like that argument. It's like, you know, I am.
That's creating a fight from the start, huh?
I don't want to fight with anyone. I
don't want to fight either.
Yeah,
I just want to say things that would get them to come.
No, but I would mainly just make it very generic. It's like, guys, you know, they already know that we are ex-Muslims, right? So we're gonna, you know, advertise as saying, you know, what are the topics that you would like to talk about? Like, you know, it's like more, you know, when we were discussing a few times earlier, when we said, oh, you know what, let's talk about spirituality, because we were talking about it bilaterally. So we thought, like, okay, let's do one episode about it. So it's the same thing. It's like, you talk, you know, would you like to talk about praying or Islam or religion in general, monotheist religions, not just Islam, because you know we keep only talking about Islam, which is, of course, the majority of the Middle East are Muslims, but it's the indoctrination of religion, whether Christianity, Islam, Judaism, you know, all of these religions are they have the same system, I would say. So again, you know, we can just be very broad, very open to suggestions, and let's see where these suggestions go. Like, what are the mainstream? What are the things that people
So the
like?
people that show interest early on, we should try to scoop them up and get it done really quickly, because if you get interest from somebody and then it's another 6 weeks before it happens, that guy's gone.
Yeah.
So it needs to be more like you do a post like that, and we're maybe within a week we're prepared to do the episode.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we would have to work fast, figure that out.
Yeah.
And the idea is the early people that show interest, they're the ones most likely to actually get on to call in.
Yeah.
Those, they were brave enough to speak up in the first place.
Having that interaction itself, like Hani said, is what's going to create the direction. Once you have that initial interaction, whether it's one person or more, that in itself is going to be creating its own content and generating the questions that are based on the conversation.
So when you write that post, put a little tiny bio for each of the three of us. I already got one for Osama I could give you. I have one for myself. You just got to make one for yourself, and then
give me you guys your bio, and then I will draft something in Arabic. All
right, so I'll work on that. I'll send you an email with whatever details I have. We have logistical issues too. The way we're using StreamYard, I'm the only one that has access to control the comments.
Yes.
And show a comment, and I won't be able to do that in Arabic.
Yeah, it's okay. I can do that in Arabic.
No, assuming that StreamYard is being used in the first place, if that's going to go on Facebook and Instagram, then the platform might not be the same to begin with.
It would be totally different, yeah. And then
Osama and I, we read Arabic, so we can, interact with the comments.
Oh,
I think, Rami, you can probably get Arabic. I mean,
can you put any of the comments? Can you put a comment on the screen? You can't do that, right?
I can if I am logged into YouTube, but unfortunately, I'm not logged into YouTube.
No, I think I'm the only one that can do stuff like this. You guys can't do that, right?
I think a couple of weeks ago I was able, but then
okay. The thing is, because
StreamYard only allows 2 hosts, and I'm using one for a different person for another project, not related to Deconstructing Islam.
Yeah.
And so I'm stuck with only having the 2 roles. But if we use Facebook or whatever else, then it's different rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big issue. We're not reinventing the wheel. These are platforms that accommodate these things already. It's not.
Yeah, but you don't want to be dealing with those technical issues right when we start. That's all.
We can, I think we can use the same platform here. We can just, by advertising it in Arabic, I think we will get people, we will get people like once we advertise it, what we can do, we can advertise it, let's say 2 weeks in advance, and then another week in advance, and then 3 days, and then just to keep the post on the group coming in, so people can see it. So if we do it like multiple times throughout a span of 10 days or 2 weeks, so people can see it, and then yes.
So suppose you made the post within a week. So we're talking maybe the 20th, or we're talking like the 27th?
20th of March.
Yeah, the last Thursday of March. Let's say it like that.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Yeah, I'll be in the mountains, but yes.
Where are you going to be?
I'm going to be...
You don't have to say where you're going to be.
Oh.
But I'm going to be in a...
Sorry for pressuring you. I wasn't trying to be rude. No.
No. I'm going to be in a mountain, and there is a project that we're working on. And the funny, I'm really looking forward to it, because the funny part is that you go there 4x4 with a 4x4 till up to a point, and then we take donkeys to reach there for 7 hours.
I'm jealous.
Donkey
On donkeys?
Yeah, donkey ride going up, because it's a it's a rocky, because we want to reach to this village up in the mountain, and then it's only a donkey ride, like 7 hours.
Fuck, man.
So I'm gonna take photos and send it to you guys.
We
when
live
I-
in a whole
That
different
actually sounds like
world.
fun. I would do that.
Yeah,
We live in
Yeah,
a different. I've only lived in cities. That's all I know.
yeah. No,
Big
so I'm
cities.
really looking forward for it. So I'll be in that mountain, but luckily there is
Be
internet.
closer to
Well,
the satellites.
not-
Will the satellites
yeah,
work
it's
better?
a satellite internet. It's not gonna be the best thing, but it will work, I guess. So yeah.
I'm
So,
surprised how well this is working if you're on satellite.
Yeah,
Satellite internet.
it's not bad, huh? Because anyway, like my colleagues are sleeping. It's already 11:41 p.m.
Is that Elon Musk internet or what?
I don't know, like it's a Starlink or something like that.
That's
So
that's
yeah.
Elon
basically-
Musk, right?
Oh yeah. So my colleagues are sleeping, so that's why the internet is not, there is no heavy traffic
Oh,
on it.
perfect. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
9 p.m. or something, right?
No, now it's 11:45,
Oh, shit.
so it's almost midnight here.
You're a night person. I would be passed out right now. I wouldn't be able to do this.
Yeah. Well, normally I am asleep at this time, but because it's Thursday and tomorrow is Friday, so we're not working, so
Mm.
it's okay. So I can.
All right, guys. Do you have anything
right.
you want to say before we get off?
No, it's good. Like it's been again informative as usual, but let's plan.
Actually, I
this
forgot.
for
I got
the
some more
end.
things to say.
Yeah, go
Like,
ahead.
subscribe, share to everyone who liked this. If
Yeah.
you want to suggest topics or call in, we got links in the description.
Mhm.
We have a Discord if you're interested. Next week on this show, I think it's going to be about, how do I say it? I forget the title now. Maybe I should read it. Hold on. Yeah. How Islam preys on people using the illusion of certainty. And we're taking calls and doing chat, Q&A. And I'll have a 9-minute video by Karl Popper, interviews that he did in color. It's really interesting. He's like, to me, he's like an old dead guy that, you can't talk to. But there's videos of him on YouTube. That, to me, that shit is shocking. Because I see him as like,
Yeah, there's a full interview with him. I think that also has echoes, if I'm not mistaken. A full interview with a TV crew. So it's
that's pretty cool. That shit exists. And he was probably in his 80s or 90s getting that done.
Hmm.
And he was able to talk to Einstein and shit. Like Osama, did you ever what's your connection to Einstein?
Oh, I can actually show you my connection.
Really, man,
Yeah.
I was taking a guess there. Another
Yeah.
prediction coming true.
Let me see if I actually have it. Really quickly.
I'm saying to people something that's sort of unique in the world of physics is, every physicist is connected to the previous ones in the sense that, like, I learned from my professors. That professor was a student learning from their professor one-on-one.
Yeah.
Going back to, let's say, Isaac Newton and maybe a little bit before that. But there was a huge break in between of nobody doing that kind of learning one-on-one. And
For
so
me,
we have
I am a-
to Einstein. Let's
You
say
know, to be
3-4
honest,
connections removed.
Well,
You know,
I
if-
can't. Yeah, I can't
Okay.
find it right now, but I took a picture of I had a summer school one day at the Institute of Advanced Study in Princeton, and the place there was a famous picture where Einstein is standing in front of a place over there. It's called Fold Hall, and I took a picture in the same exact place that he was standing in. So it's actually wonderful going in those places. We stayed in a dorm on I forgot the name of the street. It was called either Einstein Plaza or Einstein Street or something like that.
Where, in Switzerland or in Germany?
No. This is in New Jersey. It's
in New Jersey. Oh,
because
okay.
that's the place where most of the physicists that came out of Europe during World War II started.
Okay. Yeah.
And so you had Einstein, you had Gödel in that place. You had all sorts of people that actually worked from that particular place.
You know, I
It
always
was
say,
an honor and wonderful to be there.
You know, I always say, you know, because I am more into literature, I'm not into science. You know, I was very bad with math and chemistry, and so I was like more into literature, and I love history and geography. Anyway, but like I always say, if I am into science, I think I would be a physician. Like I would be into physics because, you know, again, I'm not a scientist, but when I read about physics and how it works and how actually a lot of our, you know, a lot of things in our life relies on physics and the body mass, the movement, and the universe, and so many things are connected to physics. And for me, it's very intriguing. And
Osama, tell your story. Why did you get into physics?
Well, I might have
And
actually.
I'll tell mine.
Well, I'm probably this is going to be a different story right now, and we're towards the end. But
It's a long story.
I mean, it's not a long story in particular, but it is something that has to do actually with religion, because my own
Not for me.
My own inquiry, I would say probably I was roughly around the 7th grade or something like that. I've always had an interest in science, but going into physics as the exploration of the universe, of knowing what this actually is, that coincided with my doubts about Islam and what it says about the universe. And so wanting to know how things really are, that was one of the drivers.
So you saw them as in competition with each other?
Well, at the beginning, no. I thought that I was, to quote the title of a book by Paul Davies, I was looking for the mind of God.
Wow, okay. See, that wasn't my history. Real quick, I'll say mine, I guess. It was really early that I was into physics type stuff. Like I could tell stories when I was 10. I could tell stories when I was 7. But let's say in high school I took a physics class, and I remember one day he put a video on of something that happened in Caltech, some professor doing some lecture, and by the end of the video, I noticed I'm sitting straight up, my back is straight. And I have goosebumps, okay, and I feel like I'm having an orgasm in my brain, okay. And I look around because he just turned on the light, right? I look around, there's people with slobber waking up right now, and to me, I was like, I noticed a big difference. I'm very interested in what was on that video, and they were not at all. Didn't give a shit. Then in college, I had decided that I'm gonna be a physician. I went into biology for whatever reason. There's reasons for that, and I was studying biology and chemistry. But I also, because I love physics, I changed their normal scheduling for when you take physics as a biology degree, and it's junior year. And I said, "Fuck that! I'm not waiting." I took it my freshman year, and in my freshman year in a physics lab, I had done my work. I'm really fast at it, faster than everybody else. And the teacher's aide, who's a physics major, looked at my work and said, "You should be in physics."
Oh, okay.
And then I looked at him and I was like, "Yeah, what the fuck am I doing?" And then I switched to physics and finished out the degree that way. But I really love that I started with biology and chemistry, because I had an understanding of things that the other physicists didn't get to have. And it came out in a class in my last year in physics, solid state physics. And the stuff I learned in chemistry helped me there, and the other students didn't have that. And I found that to be interesting, that it worked in reverse way. I saw it as there's biology, to understand biology, you need chemistry. To understand chemistry, you need physics. But it also worked the other way around in that case, where chemistry concept helped me in physics.
Yeah.
And yeah, none of that was connected to religion.
No.
All right, guys. So that's it then.
Well, wait just a second.
Oh, you found it.
Yeah, I found this.
Okay, there it is. That's your connection to Einstein.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You were young there.
Yeah, I had more hair.
Yeah.
That's not the part I was focusing on.
Well, that's for me right now. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
The connection that I was talking about was like, I'll tell you something real quick. So like, oh, why did that happen? Here we go. So I've had personal conversations with David Deutsch. I mean email. And he had personal conversations with Karl Popper. That's the guy I was telling you that we're going to talk about next week.
Yeah.
And Karl Popper had personal discussions with Einstein. So I'm 3 people removed from Einstein. You know what I mean? That's what I mean by connection.
Yeah,
So how many people are you removed from Einstein? Not that he's like the greatest. There's other great people too, you know.
Speaking of like, you know, oh, sorry, go ahead, Osama.
No, I do have more connections with Weinberg because so my advisor, his advisor was Preskill, the guy who's working in quantum computing right now, and his advisor was Weinberg. So
now I don't even know who's Weinberg.
Oh, well, Weinberg is basically the one who, along with the Pakistani physicist Abdus Salam, was part of the people who engineered what we know as the physics standard model for particles right now.
Okay, so I'm sure he had personal discussions with Einstein, right?
I'm trying to think right now. I mean, he did live in the right era. I cannot say right now, but yeah, I mean, eventually you do have a lot of people.
Oh, let me give another example of another connection. So me to David Deutsch to Karl Popper, and from what I understand, Feynman had conversations. Richard Feynman.
Yeah,
and of course, Richard Feynman had talked with Einstein.
Yeah. So it's not hard actually to come up with connections to almost anybody if you really want to do it. Supposedly through 6 degrees of freedom.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah,
6 degrees of separation, which actually it's more and more I started to believe in that, like this what they call it, 6
degrees, and you get
separation.
Connected to every human being. Is that the idea?
It's not. I believe it's not hard to demonstrate it mathematically. Eventually, we're even though we might look like we're too many. The fact that we're talking about relatively few generations, it's possible to make those connections. Assuming that we're making connections within a relatively
small the really cool point that I was trying to make about it all is, so it doesn't stop at Einstein. Einstein had personal discussions with whoever was before him, and so on, back to Newton, and then a little bit before that. But then there was a long break, right? There wasn't, that was the Middle Ages of Europe, and the only way to relearn from the people before you was through books, I guess, or some of it was hidden. From what I understand, Newton also had discussions with people in the Islamic world. There was some people doing stuff there, and that's you know what I mean. Like it wasn't just him, sort of in a vacuum in Europe. I mean, a lot of people have been saying that, right? Europe sort of relearned the classical Greek stuff supposedly from the dudes who understood it in the Islamic world.
Right. So there's a lot of dependence on some of the stuff that the Muslims essentially preserved a great deal of that knowledge in the form of translation that went into Latin eventually.
We don't know they're Muslims, but it was in the Islamic world, right?
Well, whatever the context is, what we today consider as Muslim civilization was a link in that kind of conveyor belt that connects you all the way back to the Greeks. But to say that this was the only conduit, that's actually a very naive thing, as if all Greek knowledge has disappeared from Europe. That's not true. But the Muslim translations did actually play a very important role. And if it weren't for caliphs that were willing to bend the rules and actually go into things that are not typically Islamic, and promote something like translations, promote people talking about things in their own courts, having them discuss these things. This wasn't something that can be taken for granted. It went into it was against the grain, as it were.
Okay, guys, we should end it here, I guess. Unless you have anyone else. Nothing. All right, let's end it here.